The Romeo X dropped last year, and you guys in the comment section weren't all that impressed, even though I was. I thought it was legit on both footprints. It had amazing glass and an amazing emitter. The criticism from you guys was pretty universal. Why isn't it enclosed? It's 2023. Y'all should enclose it. Well, now, boys, it's 2024 and it is enclosed. Welcome back to the Humble Marksman channel. I'm David, and this is the Romeo X enclosed, or RXE, or because I give stuff stupid nicknames, we're going to call it the Richie because, RXE. Now, the Romeo X enclosed is got basically the same housing. The Romeo X enclosed is a little bit longer front to back than is the old Romeo X that dropped last year. The Romeo X was a really impressive open reflex sight. My one big complaint is that the shroud is so deep that lint would get on the back of the lens and it was very difficult to get it off without a Q-tip. Fast forward to now, and they have mounted a second lens and nitrogen purge to the sight. So what you get is a beautifully clear dot that has lint that is very easy to get off the back lens. Basically a perfect concealed carry sight. One thing that we'll be doing is we'll be taking a look at it next to the Holosun EPS. The Holosun EPS has actually been my favorite carry sight simply because it is an enclosed emitter optic and it has beautifully clear glass and a lovely 6 MOA dot. Now, Sig Sauer has a lovely 3, 6, or even circle dot configuration with the Romeo X enclosed. This happens to be the 6, and it is an absolutely gorgeous dot. It's the best looking carry dot and glass combo that I've got. We'll get into all that, but first I do want to give a shout out to the dads in the audience, give you guys this crisp high five, and honor you with this. I told a bad chemistry joke once. Didn't get a reaction. I'd like to tell you guys how stuff comes to the channel. In this instance, it came on this gun. You can watch the video on the SIG P365 fuse. It's right here. But this comes in two formats. This is the compact footprint one that is for skinny guns, and it sits on the RMS footprint. They also make a Pro version, which is the Delta Point Pro version, which is for the full size slides. Full size slides. Unique New York. Lemon Lion. My elocution is excellent.
It happened so fast you can't even talk about it.
So all the features that I liked about the Romeo X are present on the Romeo X enclosed. And what I really liked about the Romeo X is just how low the deck height is, meaning that the actual glass for the optic is darn near touching the slide on a pretty basic optic cut. Having the dot be really close to the slide makes it a lot easier to find it in presentations. It's just a lot more intuitive to shoot with a red dot rather than having, a high offset from the bore. You don't get as much mechanical offset, so the dot hits truer at close distance as well as far distance regardless of your zero. The other feature that I really like about the dot is the buttons are protected so you can't accidentally press the buttons, and it registers adjustment when you press the buttons with your thumbnail by blinking as the dot goes in, which is a feature you don't realize you want until you actually have it. So it's very precise when you're dialing brightness up or down. You don't feel like you're just necessarily hunting for the correct setting and wondering when you're hitting the button or not, which is nice. Silly little feature, but it's nice to have. The battery is accessed via the side door, same on the Romeo X enclosed. It's a 1632 battery, super long battery life, long enough anyway. So that's all good. And with the Romeo X, I drove a nail with this thing, dropped it on a steel plate, and basically beat up the gun pretty good, and the dot held up just fine. I'm not going to do that this go round, although I am going to recycle the footage, which you're welcome, because I like this sight so much, I'm going to put it on my carry gun. The biggest negative for this gun, and it is an issue, same issue that was on the other gun, was that the adjustment requires the world's tiniest hex bit. So the little wrench that they give you with the hex bit on it, don't lose that sucker, because I promise you don't have another one of them sitting around, and it does take that little wrench to make adjustments to windage and elevation. Good news is windage and elevation is super positive when you're adjusting it. It's a very easy sight to zero. And a benefit to them making the RM17 with NATO allied countries is that this supply chain that supplies this optic is similarly NATO allied countries, which means that the bits that aren't made in America aren't made by our enemies. A lot of people want to buy American, and this is a pretty good option for an assembled by American enclosed sight, which is very good. The Holosun EPS is very similar to the Ritchie. The Holosun EPS Has a similarly low deck height. It's not as low as the Ritchie, but it is pretty low comparatively. The glass is distortion free. It has a 6 MOA option available, and honestly, it's a very good optic. It's been my favorite carry optic until this came along. And the reason I like this better is the following. Everything about the Ritchie is just more. The glass is more clear, the dot is more crisp. And the window is a little bit smaller, but this is the compact one versus the full-size EPS. But I suspect that the full-size Ritchie is probably still smaller than the full-size Holosun EPS. I like the dot adjustment better of the buttons on the Ritchie. It's just a little bit nicer not being able to bump the buttons in the holster, which does happen from time to time. And the one thing that I noticed when I was shooting this gun first thing in the morning was that the Ritchie did not get any ghost dots when faced into a low angle of sun shooting into the sunrise, whereas the Holosun EPS did get artifacts that manifested on the screen based on the sun coming in through the window, hitting the emitter and bouncing back onto the screen. It's not as bad as the Trijicon SRO, which gives a full-on ghost dot, but it is enough kind of like gook to be a little bit distracting. It's not that bad in all honesty, but the 6-hour optic doesn't do it. But that brings us to an interesting point because, a lot of people who want these American-made dots want, not to spend all their money. The Romeo X Enclosed in its single biggest negative feature is going to be its price. As it is right now, the 6 MOA dot is going to likely sell for about $480, same as the 3 MOA. If you do the circle dot, it is going to end up being about $500. If you do the bigger option of the Ritchie on the Pro footprint, that's going to start at, what was it, $529 and go up to $549. So no way around it. That's very, very expensive. While the Holosun EPS is about $340 to $350 pretty much all day long if you get the 6 MOA version. So it's going to be interesting to watch the forums and kind of see what happens as people adopt or don't the Ritchie or they keep using the EPS. For my money, on a premium carry gun, I would absolutely spring for the Ritchie. I think it's a really great optic. I'm going to be putting it on my carry guns just generally. And it leads kind of to the question of like, is the Delta Point Pro footprint beginning to have sort of a moment? Because the Vortex XL just came out. It's on the Delta Point Pro footprint. And now the Delta Point Pro footprint has an amazing enclosed sight in the Ritchie. So are we going to start seeing even more traction on the Delta Point Pro footprint? Versus the RMR, are we going to start to kind of get away from it? I don't know. In my mind, like for carry guns, the RMS footprint is the only footprint that really matters because the enclosed sights are the best on that footprint. And it's starting to be for the big window optics. You can kind of see a trend towards stuff that's not on RMR. So I'm curious to see if another footprint will rise and really start to challenge the RMR for its dominance. I can tell you right now, I would much rather have one of these than an RMR. But that said, if you've got an astigmatism, meaning when you look at a red dot, if it's not perfectly round, but you see like little arms coming off the dot or whatever, I did this video a year ago that walks through most of the red dots on the market and describes what I'm seeing and what the dots kind of look like and why the astigmatism looks like it does.